This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are esteemed. Stay with us. Obotashal and Basnaka, welcome to this program.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Hussein.
Today we'll be discussing on critical issues. Among others, we'll be discussing on the ongoing Oromo conversation. But before that, I would like you to introduce yourself to the audience. May I start from Obotashal?
Yeah, my name is, as Dr. Hussein already introduced me, my name is Tashala Abarra. I am living in United Kingdom, London. I've been here for about the last 15 years.
And former president of the Supreme Court of Oromia. Okay, Obasnaka.
Okay, my name is Asnaka Erko. I live in Norway, and I lived here in Norway almost half of my life now, over 20 years. Actively interested in Oromo politics. Yeah.
Great, actively interested in Oromo politics. So I have two high-level profiles today, and we'll start discussing on the ongoing Oromo conversation. I recognize that recently there is ongoing Oromo conversation, and it's high on the agenda. Would you mind telling us how it was started and why the process was started? May I start from Tashala?
Yeah, the Oromo conversation started with the understanding that the conversation is told among Oromos. The reasons could be attributed to many different things, but the main reason is that in Ethiopia, in the mainland Oromia, conversation is forbidden for years, for a century, for more than a century. The Oromos were not allowed to have a conversation, not only among their, not only with the government, and to vent, to say what they want to say, to explain, to express themselves in many different ways. But even among themselves, it is forbidden. Oromos were disallowed. The Oromo culture to discuss was completely forbidden, dashed completely. And that led to the Oromo struggle, clandestine. It clandestined the Oromo conversation. It brought the Oromo conversation into a level of clandestine. You can't speak in public what you want. So you have to go underground. You have to whisper rather than speak out what you want in universities, in academic institutions, in politics, or wherever. So this led to a situation whereby the Oromo lost its tradition of having a civil conversation. The Oromo used to have a very candid, robust way of conversation. And if you go back to the Oromo culture of conversation, especially the Gada system, how law is made, how conversation is made, discussions take weeks. And it is settled with understanding. Once it is settled with understanding, it becomes a law, and everybody follows it. And that goes on between people of different ages. The Gada system, there are different ages in the Gada system. Those grades are meant to discuss ideas at their level, from grade 1 to grade 5 and above. People discuss, meaning when I say grade 1, I'm referring to the age grade from 1 to 8. They discuss, they elect, and it is so democratic and so robust. And this exists in some parts of Oromia where culture is highly adhered to and followed. But when it comes to politics and when it comes to the broader Oromo politics, it was completely dashed, and we are facing tragedy now today, but we can't have a conversation that used to be very robust, as I said, completely gone because the government disallowed it. And we came to depart from our way of life, our culture, the Gada way of, the Oromo way of conversation. So we began to think about it and began to think rather, what happened to us. Why is it that we are not having a very serious conversation? And when you look at what happened, we were forced to abandon our culture. That is what many researchers seem to agree because of what we have been having for the past year, about 12 months. We have been having this conversation, discussion, research papers were presented, and that is where we are now. From that, we agreed to have this discussion at a higher level.
Thanks so much, Botashale. Obasnak, I know that you are more familiar with the Gada system, and Oromos used to have rich culture in terms of conversation. They solve problems through discussion, and why really we failed to discuss, to have conversation in a civilized manner.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein, for giving me this chance. As you mentioned, and Obbo Tashala mentioned, exactly some 100 years back when Gada was in full function, the Oromos have, the tradition of sitting and discussing. This discussion usually, takes time. They discuss issues thoroughly and come to consensus, which means not everybody needs to agree on it, but the majority agree on opinion, and they are not afraid for discuss whatever it is when it comes to the matter of the society. So after this discussion, they reached a consensus. And then that is the way the Gada led Oromia, as a nation for many thousand years. This is like 6, 7, and more thousand years. And this Gada, criticized itself, reform itself, and always renew itself and go with the new generation, a new situation. But after some years back, when Gada was like no more functioning because of the domination of other culture, the Oromo lost that culture, and this generation, from a generation of Gada, were discussing and reaching a consensus, come to a generation which lives with rumors and whispers, instead of coming together face to face and discuss ideas and reach consensus. So basically, we lost the culture of discussion because we lost our Gada tradition. That is the basic thing.
Thank you so much, Obasnaka, and let's talk about the ongoing conversation for that matter. How did the process start, and who did initiate that process in very brief terms? Obatashala.
Yeah, the conversation started when, following the 2018 kind of appearance of transition in Ethiopia, transition to democracy, which everybody hoped that transition is going to come. When it happened, we realized, a group of people, especially the Oromo human rights group, realized that people are not having a very serious thought of what they are going into. After the sign of diversion from what has been promised, transition to democracy began to reveal itself. different Oromo human rights organizations came to the realization that the Oromo political institutions, the civic organizations, the media completely failed to understand that and come together and try to figure out jointly as to what should be done, what course of action should be followed. So when we realized that people were talking about dialogue and so on and so forth, this dialogue became a cliche which we didn't want to pick up. And then if organizing a kind of forum for dialogue is a cliche, then what shall we do? Let us have a conversation. Let us have a civil conversation. People are stuck in the past, contradicting each other, gossip, and a clandestinized way of communication completely replaced what we just said. The civilized, the robust, the honest way of conversation and finding the problem and then proposing the solution and acting upon it jointly once you agree upon it. That was what was, and it was absent from our culture. So we came to the conclusion that let us create this forum and invite people from different organizations, intellectuals, and the political organizations. By organizations, we are talking about political organizations, civic societies, and intellectuals. That is how it started. So who started it? By and large, the Oromo human rights organizations found it appropriate to organize a forum unless we discuss about our problems. Anyone who comes repeats it. So it is not about finding out a problem. It is not even about replacing the problem creator with someone else. It is about having the right idea of what should take place, even if you replace a government or a system or whatever you like, unless you have an idea of what you are doing, what went wrong, and what should replace it, then you want to go nowhere. So we were talking about human rights as, for example, Oromo Human Rights, Oromia Support Group, OMRO from Germany, and different human rights organizations took part in this. But actively who are taking part in this are now OSG and OMRO. I'm not saying that the rest are not taking part in it, but we are actively pursuing it. And there are different civic society organizations and individuals who are very much happy to support it. So it is a combination of, it's a blend of organizations, especially, so Oromo human rights organizations are creating the forum, but we want, the Oromo human rights organizations don't want to own it, rather than to create a forum and see the ownership be the people, the civic societies, the media, and every aspect of the Oromo society that is relevant in building a society that is peaceful, democratic, economically prosperous. That is what we are, what we were aiming to achieve, and that is how it is created. Dr. Hussein, if I properly answer.
Thanks so much. Obasnakas, do you have something to add, including who I mean, involved in it, like our political actors are there, a bit?
Yes, exactly. But Ashadam, described it in a beautiful way. The way it started, the human rights organizations, laid down the ground for the discussion and underlined that they only bring, the forum together and that they don't own that. I personally was invited and was with the group from the start, and this, civic organizations were very active in it, 4 or 5 of them, and the political organizations Oromo has, the 3 main political organizations were in it from the very beginning. And as said before, we have lost this tradition of discussion, and everything should be like started from scratch, because we are not used to administer. Oromia lost its administration as a nation like 150 years ago, and since that time it was under Ethiopia dictatorship. Governments have been there for years, and we are not used to come together, discuss Oromo issues. Political organizations are used to dictate instead of bringing idea to the public and taking it back and leading a country. So like this is trying something we lost 150 years ago, and trying to make an issue as well. But Shala mentioned well that this has something to do with the failure in 2018, where Oromo organizations went home without having discussion and agree on a consensus. It failed, and you all remember that there have been an attempt of Gaddisa Abota Oromo, an attempt in Finfinne to bring political organizations and create consensus. That also failed because the Ethiopian government, doesn't want an Oromo to come together. And this is another attempt, to bring Oromos together. And the civic organizations and human rights organizations were very active. And it was high time, really, to start such an issue.
Thanks so much, Basnaka. Yes, I realize that there was a kind of umbrella organization that's Gaddisa Gansa Siyasa Oromo, and it was a good attempt, but finally failed for a number of reasons. I was in it, and I know the details of it. Now, I also understand that before going deep into the conversation process and the consensus document as well as the strategy, I think the team has developed a SAFU and Kaku document. And what is the essence of that? What's it, Boasnaka? Let me start from you.
Yeah, this SAFU and the Kaku document is a sort of code of conduct to continue with the discussion. Basically, we have been here now repeating again and again that Oromo has lost its culture of conversation. And what was happening was, like, when people come together, usually instead of discussing an issue, people start focusing on each other, on personalities and personal attacks and character assassinations. So to change that, shift to intellectual discussion, what we did was we developed a document where we put and lay down some basic issues which normally is there, maybe which one doesn't need to tell, but we have to tell each other and say, for example, don't focus on the personality of a person, but focus on his idea, respect for others' ideas, and no personal attacks, focus on the issue. The unity of Oromo is the basic for this discussion, and everyone should respect the unity of the Oromo people coming together. The result of this conversation and discussion is to build a nation. So we have to, focus, mainly on the issue of building a nation than like talking about one organization or two. Trying to focus and bring, a common objective for the Oromo people. So in that, we have, laid down some issues and put down the SAFU document. And the Kaku is to agree upon this conduct and work on it. And everybody, everybody should abide with these laws and regulations under the discussion.
Thank you. Do you have something to add?
Not much. It is like a commandment. There are things that you don't do. There are taboos You don't focus on someone because of his ideas and ridicule him. That is not Oromo. And it is about reminding ourselves of the respect Oromos have for ideas and individuals. You don't just demean someone because he generated an idea that looks unagreeable, that you don't agree with. So you don't have to fight to make a person a conformist. So that is this kind of thing in terms of institution, in terms of individual, when you behave, when you communicate, just do it in the civilized Oromo way of doing it. Oromos have their own way of making conversation even today. When they go to court, they follow the Abyssinian way of doing things. But when they go back to the cultural way of dispute resolution, for example, it is really smart and it is beautiful, and the way the Oromos converse locally still is based on the Gada system, the Safu and the Kaku Oromo. There are things that you don't know, you don't do naturally. For example, there is it is not included in this one, but if you go to the Safu and the Kaku of Oromo, if a child is doing something wrong, it doesn't matter whether it is your child or not. You just don't ignore it. You have to go to the child and advise him, try to correct him, because it is your responsibility. A child is your responsibility. It doesn't matter whether it is your child or not. We have a social responsibility to look after a child, irrespective of whether it is yours or not. That is our way of bringing up a child, for example. You have to feed the child before you eat yourself. You just don't consume the food before the child. Child is a priority, for example, and among Oromos. When we talk about the Safus and the Zakakus, we covered a little bit of it, but it is too vast and it is too rich. And we must be very enthusiastic and hungry, and we must have that thirst to go back and explore that. It will solve everything if we act according to the Oromo Kaku and the Oromo Safu. It is there. We just were departed because we were forced to depart from it. When we say we are forced, you talked about Gaddisa Oromo. Same was happening in the 1960s. Just look back to what happened to the Macha and Tulama civic society self-help organization. It is a self-help organization. It is meant to build schools, teach Kube Afan Oromo or Kube. It is actually in Amharic that they were committed. The General Bru and others were doing nothing but teach their people, educate their people, build facilities such as medical facilities and build roads, for example. They were not allowed to do that. And they were banned to discuss about it, about development. So when we talk about banning of the Oromo culture and the absence of this culture, it is imposed on us. And that culture kind of swept away, but still lingering. It is still there. So we are just trying to resuscitate and to recapture our culture. That is what is, Dr. Hussein.
Great. Let's dive into the major focus of our today's discussion. I think there is a consensus document developed recently. And would you mind telling us the major content of that document? I understand that it's about defining the common interest of the Oromo people, regardless of parties or individual interest or elites and so on. It's about defining the common interest of the Oromo people. I understand that way. And what is there in the document? Would you mind telling us? One of you can take the stage.
Dr. Bosnak, you can Go ahead of me.
Okay, I can start and you can fill in. Basically, the content of this document is to explore what Oromo needs if we get our freedom and, if we get our nation back. So in that regard, this document briefly, not exhaustively, includes the basic, political interest of the Oromo people, building our nation back on the interest of the Oromo people, phrase about self-determination for the Oromo people. And again, the democracy we have lost in Gada. Gada was a democratic tradition we have had for 1,000 years, and it is to claim back the democracy, equality of human being, the economic interest of the Oromo people, about our land, about our resources, how to use that the Oromo should use its resource. And the basic things are the political, economic, and the social aspect and cultural aspect. We have lost our culture for over 100 years, and claiming back our tradition, our culture, and even our language, an attempt to get back our language as an official language and use it in our daily administration. So here, what I'm mentioning is briefly touched upon in the document, and the parties involved have, come with their ideas and come to a consensus on these issues. So this is what I can briefly say.
He summarized it already. When we began to discuss about the problem itself, agreeing on the problem itself existed, and when we finally came to the conclusion that it is the problem is right, it is there, it took some time to understand and to realize and to accept the problem itself. Once the problem is understood, and we have to have a civil conversation, and people came with ideas that what is it that we are going to have a conversation about, and people came up with the idea that we have to identify Oromo national agenda in the first place. What is it that is burning? We should talk about. If we have to talk, we just don't talk for the sake of talking or conversation. So we have to identify Oromo national interests. When it comes to national interests, there are core issues. For example, there are political issues, such as the right to self-determination, which everybody accepts. Everybody agrees that Oromia and Oroma is taken away by the project of Menelik, and claiming back, getting back the Oromo culture and the Oromo nation and the Oromo everything is a necessity. It is something that every Oromo agrees upon. So in terms of politics, in terms of cultural rights, for example, the Ohan Oromo should survive and should work in Oromia. When we talk about culture, the Oromo cultural, historical rights should be preserved. So far, the Oromo culture is an antithesis of Ethiopia, as far as we exist in what is called Ethiopia. It is a problem always. And it is considered by the Amara elites, the Amara intellectuals in universities from top to bottom, that Oromo culture, the Oromo history is something that should be undermined, so that Ethiopia as formulated by Abyssinia should survive. So we came to the understanding that this is something that everyone agrees upon. So let us talk about get our priorities right. By priorities right, our cultural rights, our political right, our economic right. For example, the resources in Oromia should be dealt with and protected by Oromos. That is the agreement of everyone. If we agree on this, then the details will come, but we agree on this. For example, the core agenda, the right to self-determination, which everybody, especially over the past 13 years, it has been demonized and demeaned by the Abyssinian political elites, by the establishment of Abyssinian political elites. The right to self-determination is something that you can't compromise on. That is an achievement that has been promoted and pronounced by Oromo elites for the past 30 years, but blamed and, as I said, demonized and demeaned by the Abyssinian politicians. You cannot disagree with, because it is not even about Ethiopia to reframe and reform this. It is something that is universal, something that Ethiopia signed, subscribed to. It is in an international convention that the right to self-determination must be the right of everyone, every people. So these kinds of things that we agreed upon, that we are not different as far as Oromos are concerned. So if we agree on this, then let us talk about the details of it. That is where we are now. We developed a document, for example. It's a quite comprehensive document. We cannot say that every Oromo agreed upon it, but we developed a document called Oromo National Consensus. It is very detailed and contains what I'm talking and more. That has been agreed upon, and we are in the process of engaging all Oromos onto it and developing it and refining and retuning it. That will give us a reason for us to communicate effectively and in a way we used to communicate over the past 1,000 years. That is what we are doing. That is where we are.
Thank you. I see three major pillars over there: political, economic, and socio-cultural interests of the Oromo people, vis-a-vis the self-determination issues, the right to determine the fate of the Oromo people. Let me pose one question, that is, how far this document have been communicated, the Safukaku or the consensus document. I know that there was a very big conference and people were there and I participated in it, and there was discussion, and that was, I think, a good starting point. It's important to sell out and communicate with people, different actors, the entire Oromo people. What is the plan? Do you have a following plan, or how are you going to reach out the different actors of the Oromo people?
Yeah, it is for me, and the plan for the Oromo Human Rights Group is, as far as I know, and the team that is included in this Oromo conversation, is that we have to reach out to everyone else. It is not up to us to define the Oromo interest. It is about the Oromos to define and refine it. It is about the Oromo political organizations to talk about what is it that they want to achieve in whatever they are running as politics. What is it that the Oromo media are trying to promote when they are running a media? A media is a cornerstone of conversation. Without a media, you don't have a civil conversation. Ideas won't develop unless you have a media. A media is banned in Ethiopia. We never had a media. It is state-controlled, and the state controls everything. The state talks, you listen, you respond. It is like North Korea. The state talks and everybody bows to it, and that is what it is. That is the culture. Now we have got many medias, about 50 or more medias, and I'm not counting the social media, who are as influential as the mainstream media, the print and the TV and the radio. We have got a lot of them. So what we are trying to achieve is appeal to them. Just understand that and begin a honest conversation, a critical but respectful, a robust one, and yet meaningful and something that has substance. The ones Abagadas are doing, and when they are doing, and when they are having conversation, even today, when Gada is really effective especially in the southern part of Oromia, it is so robust. So who we are appealing to? We are appealing to everyone else. Who we are trying to involve? We are trying to involve everyone else. It is not us. It is everybody else's agenda. From the feedback we are getting, I think we are on the right course, and everybody appreciates it, and everybody understands it. So that's where we are. We are organizing events. We have been organizing series of events, and we have been having a meeting every week with different civic society organization leaders and intellectuals who are volunteers, such as, including, for example, Asnaka. At a matter of fact, in terms of Oromo human rights groups, at that level, we are planning to invite phase organization. For example, the WAC FATA, they are as neutral as Oromo human rights organizations. And other phase organizations who are politically free, they are not doing politics as much as Oromo human rights organizations. And we are also contemplating whether the media representatives or media personnel would be interested to take part and help us in facilitating this, in organizing this. We are organizing the room into which everybody, every Oromo, every civic organization, every Oromo leader comes in and promotes the ideas Oromo wanted to be promoted without being vilified, without being demeaned, without being ridiculed. We are tired of it. Where we got it from? We got it from the system that has been ridiculing us, taught us how to ridicule people, and we inherited that, and we are using it against ourselves, against each other. So that is where we are, Dr. Hussein. I don't know whether I properly and
that's perfect. That's perfect. I'm asking you that question because it has to be all inclusive. For instance, all political actors, elites, the youth, the elders, Bagadas, all religions, what have you. I mean, all actors should be in it. And Basnaka, would you mind adding on that?
But Shala explained it very well. This is the issue of the Oromo people and organizations, both civic organizations and political organizations have been discussing this issue for more than 1 year. But it is now time where the document should be out, reached to the public, and the public can add or remove whatever they want so they can develop it. But media, as Buttishala mentioned, is the basic medium to reach out to the public. In addition to that, even town hall meetings, conferences and seminars, both online and physical meetings are very important. People should come together face to face and start discussing their issue. The nation, the Oromo nation, is a great nation, a big nation. So this should be discussed. And even we have to use the modern social media and different digital methods to reach out to the youth, because the Kares and the Keros are the most responsible one for the Oromo nation, those who can take over the Oromo nation. So we have to reach to them and even listen to them, because they are the one who takes the responsibility of the future of Oromia. So that's what I can add.
That's great. That's why I'm capitalizing on that. In any change process, I think our initiative, like, there should be awareness creation. People should be aware of what's going on. Then you build consensus, agreed on, then commitment. These are the three stages. And in many African countries, projects aborted because of this abnormal process. The process should be first creating awareness, second is consensus building, agreement, and then commitment towards it. I think in that regard, it's important to reach out, include all actors in the process, because at the end of the day, we are not talking about the political interest of one party or one group or an elite. We are talking about the common interest of the Oromo people. With that, I would like to get out of this and perhaps would like to get your reflection on the current situation of Ethiopia and Oromia. And it's obvious that Ethiopia and Oromia is in deep crisis in terms of politics, in terms of economy, in terms of diplomacy. How do you see this as a person, as an individual who have been observing it for a long period of time and actually involved in it partly? May I start from Botashale?
Yeah, the crisis in Ethiopia has always been there since the empire is formed that way. But if you look back and just compare the different periods, we are in a worse place now. It has never been like this. Even probably during the Minilik invasion, things might have been worse than they are now. I can't properly evaluate that. Historians might be able to compare and contrast that. But if you see what happened over the past 30, 40 years, which we roughly remember, the imperial era, it is not a very far memory. By imperial era, I mean the Haile Selassie, the last age of it. If you look at it, it is far better than this one. It is possible, for example, to have demonstration. Students can demonstrate and make demonstration in the cities in many different places without being killed in mass. During the Derg, there was no demonstration. You are told that you cannot demonstrate. We have got enemies, and that is called imperialism. And if you are having any idea, you will be branded like that, and you will be executed. And you are told not to do, and you don't. During the this government, the EPRDF government, the pre-2018 EPRDF government, which continued to date, changing its name from EPRDF to Prosperity and excluded TPLF somehow. We were told that there is democracy and there is semblance of constitution, but that constitution didn't apply. They said that we value, we appreciate, we love that constitution, but we don't have it. You don't have that constitution. The constitution and the cake is there, they eat it, but you can't taste it. You can't get near it. That is what happened until 2018. That was the source of the contradiction. And in 2018, it was hoped that the constitution would apply. By apply, including the right to self-determination would apply. We would choose whatever we want in terms of local election, or conducting the big referendum would be something we could enjoy. That was the understanding. But after 2018, things got completely off, as everybody knows. And Prime Minister Abiy created a havoc, deliberately planned for it. And now we are where we are. The Oromos who brought the change become an enemy of the government. They are portrayed like that. The TPLF, who championed the constitution and who sat on the constitution, became the victim of their doing in a way. I'm not blaming them because they are taking a very huge hit and they don't deserve that, irrespective of what TPLF did. The people of Tigray don't deserve what is happening to them. It is really very sad, and I want to take this opportunity to express my feeling for the Tigray people. The bombardment, the rape, the killing is as bad as what is happening in Oromia today. So what is happening in Oromia is we have never been bombed by jets except during the Bale movement when the Emperor Haile Selassie tried bombing people for the first time on some people. Now even the foreigners, the Turks, the Arab Emirates, and by and large the Eritrean government is invited to crush people, to kill people, to conduct genocide, to mass rape. And where we are, it is really sad. You can see what is happening in Tigray, and what is happening in Tigray is happening in Oromia for the past 30 years. It is happening right while we are speaking, and you know what is happening today, this week, every day. And Oromia is suffering. We are being hit. Our people are being hit by drones, jets, and the villages and churches are being devastated. And it is artificially created hunger nowadays. So the crisis in Ethiopia is, in Oromia and in other parts, especially in Tigray, is genocide, pure, simple genocide. So that is why we have to have a civic and very robust conversation in which we can invite the international community to intervene, to provide humanitarian assistance, tools, kits for kids and mothers, pregnant mothers who need assistance. If you are pregnant and if you can't get medical help, you will die. If you will die you starve to death if you don't get help in a government-induced hunger, starvation, poverty. So it is time for us to create a situation whereby people like famous singers come out, sing for Oromos, collect assistance, help that could be provided through organizations such as OLA, for example, or different organizations, civil organizations through southern part of Oromia, because nowadays the southern part of Oromia is controlled by OLA. So it is time to negotiate with them and find a solution for our crisis. By crisis, I mean just basic food, for example, water and clothing and medical assistance from south and western part of Oromia. And we must talk to the other nations and nationalities, whether they can help us in that. It is time to go back. People like Bob Geldof, who helped the Tigray and Eritrea movement to bear some fruit. So it is about talking sense to the international community as to the appropriate way of helping the people. They helped the government to provide millions and billions of dollars. What it did, it created a monster in the Horn of Africa. It is time to think otherwise now, because the government they relied on, they supported over the past 30 years became what became. Abiy is a product of the previous government. It is a bad seed, there is no question about it. Even that regime didn't produce this kind of government. It is a very wrong breed in terms of politics. I'm not talking about him as a person. He is as good as every one of us, but his thinking, the way he thinks and he tries to govern, and the way he thinks came to power, it is dangerous. It is a very radical, dangerous way of thinking, that if you begin thinking that my mother told me and I am anointed, that is as bad as Al-Qaeda or any radical thinking. You should run away. That is what it is. And we are in this kind of situation, a situation where people are bombarded by jets. We have never seen this in many years, except for the ballet movement, where some people are, some movement are suppressed by jet. It happened in Oromos, but it is not on this scale. So that is where we are now.
Thank you. I've been raising this question all through in my program because I would like to get the reflection of different people. And Bosnaka, we are running out of time. Let's have your reflection on the same question and on the political, economic, and diplomatic crisis of Ethiopia and Oromia in particular, briefly.
Yeah, it is really, in Oromia, it is now in a very tough situation. Everybody knows that things have gone from bad to worse. And we have never seen in our life the worst situation in Oromia today. Not only the economic, but also even living, survival become the basic thing today. The government, turned to be an enemy of the nation, an enemy for the people. It was supposed to help the people. The government structure was supposed to be there, to organize people, help people, and support. But on the contrary, the government is, afraid of the people, and the killing may come with really very different way of killing machines, from gunship turned to the MiG jets, and nowadays drones. In Oromia, what happened the last 2 weeks is really outrageous, very difficult. Many villages, schools, churches burned down, children in schools, killed by the government drones. Because the government claims that opposition fighters are there, but they kill the civilians on the streets. This is really very difficult to explain what's happening in Oromia today. But as Botoshala mentioned, the Oromo people should raise their voice, especially here in abroad. We have to appeal to the international community to help, because this has gone beyond the control of Ethiopian government now. The government tried to show it is, another different face by saying they negotiate with the Tigrayans, especially this weekend. The negotiation in South Africa ends today. I don't know if something come out of that, but ignoring the Oromo, the majority people, ignoring the Ola in this negotiation, and trying to show the world that they want to end the war in Tigray, while they are fighting, sending drones in Oromia and killing children in schools. So, many controversial things happening in Oromia. So, since you are running out of time, I may really conclude here.
Sorry, yes, we are running out of time. Let me be, unfair sometimes, not always fair, unfair to you. Let me ask you one question. There is a fallacy of, the current government is Oromo government. For me, it's a fallacy, but let me be unfair to you. Do you agree or disagree? Brief answer, Obotoshala.
There is no what's called anything called Oromo government. Abiy is product of EPRDF, and there has never been, and there is no any Oromo government.
Same question to Abu Asnaga.
there is no Oromo government today. The OPDOs are the products of EPRDF, who were serving the EPRDF, the TPLF previously. Today they took over the power, and they become even more dangerous than the TPLF in those days. So Oromo has nothing to do with this government.
Thank you. The other fallacy, deep inside a continued war, crisis, inflation, drought, famine, and so on, the government is claiming that there is economic growth and development. Do you agree or disagree, Botashale?
Yeah, there are development and progress for those who are feeding on sucking the blood of the oppressed. They are prospering, and they are having a very deeper grip on to the wills of the people. If we are talking that, then there is a prosperity. The prosperity party is, and its members are prospering, but the people are always going down and down. And I was talking about exchange rate, and somebody was telling me that one sterling pound is exchanged in black market for 105 pound birr. It was 20 a couple of years ago.
Got it.
It's 100. So this is not progress.
I totally agree with Opasashala, because the development of the country is measured by the increase in GDP. I'm not economist, but as a layman, the country needs hard currency. The country needs building, roads, schools, health institutions. But today in Ethiopia, they are, lacking hard currencies for exchange, foreign exchange, as well as the country is, going deep in crisis economically. So there is no really reasonable development in the country.
Thank you for that matter. That's a kind of challenging question, but very simple answer. Let me give you another opportunity. What do you advise to the international community in general terms, to the government of Ethiopia, to the Oromo people, and all actors around the world? Because the nation is in a deep crisis, war, famine, inflation, corruption, what have you. Do you have any advice in general terms to different actors, particularly to the Oromo people? Botashale.
Yeah, the international community must begin to understand the relevance of the Oromo situation. The Oromo situation is quite relevant. The crisis in Oromia is as bad as in Tigray. It is good that the international community is concerned about Tigray. There is no question about it. We can't compare and contrast problems. But the Oromo situation and the situations in other parts of the country should be given attention. And that this government is not sustainable. And it is going to affect the entire region unless they act now, especially letting Isaias to have a free reign around there. Whenever he wanted, he works with Al-Shabaab. Whenever he wants, he works against Djibouti and any country around there. Is the enemy of AU, for example. And he is a sworn enemy of democracy itself. Said your democracy doesn't work. He said that on a media. So letting this government work with Isaias and ruining the fate of 100 million people will have, there is no, it is inevitable, have a very disastrous repercussion in the entire region, if not for the entire Africa. Ethiopia is a country that hosts 100 plus people, 100 plus million people. So the repercussion of the crisis, the ongoing crisis, could be even worse unless they intervene now, or at least unless they stop supporting and appeasing the Abiy government if they have to speak to the Ethiopian people or are concerned about the crisis in Ethiopia. They must begin talking to organizations such as OLA as much as they are talking to TPLF and other oppressed nations, nationalists as well, and hoping that or believing that the failed Abiy government is a government that could respond to and respond to reason is just crazy, because they are as much worse as Isaias is. There's no question about it. So the international community was to wake up and begin working directly with the organizations that are legitimate in the eyes of the people. So, for example, in the case of Tigray, TPLF, and in the case of Oromia, OLA, and Oromo Liberation Army and Oromo Liberation Front, and OFC, Oromo Federalist Congress, which are much recognized and much appreciated and much reasonable in whatever they are saying. It is time to sit, recognize them, and make them provide a solution, a lasting solution. They may not be the only one, but they are, no question, the key to the solution for the crisis that is set to come with a very disastrous tidings. That is what it is, Dr. Hussein.
Thank you, Botashala. Your reflections of Basnaka briefly. We are running out of time. Sorry for that.
Briefly speaking on this issue, when we see the international community right now, they ignore the Oromo nation, the Oromo people, but they speak about the Tigray people. I am happy that the international community has given due attention to the Tigray people. They are dying. That should be recognized. But at the same time, more than 50% of the Ethiopian population is the Oromo people. 70% of the economy of Ethiopia is from Oromia. But the international community try to ignore the Oromo nation and, just giving deaf ear. You can see from the Twitters on Ethiopia right now, every United Nations and US and the European authorities tweeting about TPLF and about Tigray, but nobody utter a single word about the drone attack in Oromia today and the death and even the famine in Oromia. That is something which should be underlined, and Ethiopian political crisis cannot be solved without taking due consideration and involving the Oromos and Oromo nation. That should be known by the international community. Today, genocide is taking place in Tigray and in Oromia, and the international community should not sit and wait until like millions and 2 million die. I don't know how many 100,000 die until today in Oromia and in Tigray. It really can count up to one genocide, and UN should interfere. Otherwise, Ethiopian government cannot control. Eritrea involved and the many other Middle East countries involved in Ethiopian current situation. So unless United Nations get involved, this problem cannot be solved. So it is high time that the international community, goes beyond words and critics and take actions. That's what I add.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that you raised about Ethiopian crisis cannot be solved without solving the crisis in Oromia, because Oromia is the largest national regional state in that country in terms of geographic coverage as well as in terms of the total number of population. It's important to solve the problems that are found in Oromia. Then that's helps to solve the problem in that nation and beyond that, even in East Africa. And with this, we conclude our discussion today with Obbo Teshala and Obbo Asnaqa. It was really remarkable. Had it not been for the time limitations, we could have discussed more. Profoundly thank you for that. And for those of you who would like to share your vision, hopes, professional critics, the door is open. Please contact me through my Facebook. My name is Hussein Kader. See you next time. Obbo Teshala and Obbo Asnaqa, profoundly thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein, for having me.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, Dr. Hussein.
This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are esteemed. Stay with us.